Hello, 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 everyone. How's it going? I hope you're enjoying the hackathon. And as far as I know, all the messages that I've received, I think it's been going pretty well. First of all, welcome back to, I think, my third stream today. Yes, third stream today. But again, always excited to see you all here. So, what do we have right now? We are going to have a session from Cynthia, uh, who is from GitHub, and she is going to take a session on building for social impact. So if you have not registered for the session already, from the link that I shared on Discord, let me share it again with you all. So please register for the session here. The link is in the chat. We'll wait for maybe 1 more minute, let other folks join, and then we can pass it over to Cynthia. Perfect. Couple of more people joining in. I announced again on Discord. So if your friends, teammates are here talking with you, please do let them know that we have this amazing session that's going to happen right now. Okay, let me just reduce the music a bit. Bit down low. And okay, we can take this away from here. So first of all, let me introduce Cynthia. So Cynthia is a program manager leading skills-based volunteering program and tech for good partnerships at GitHub Social Impact. Cynthia helps social sector organizations use GitHub better and connect open source developers to work on tech for good. So I think that's like kind of the theme of the hackathon. We are doing something for good. And with that, let me call Cynthia on stage and let me just move. Hi, Cynthia. How are you doing?
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining. So, actually, I will not say anything from here. I'll give it all to you. And yeah, just take it away from here. Thank you so much. I'll go away.
No, thank you, and thanks for everybody taking time to participate in this hackathon and joining this session. A little bit about myself. I'm Cynthia. I'm at GitHub, and I focus on being able to make it a little bit easier for social sector organizations to use GitHub. This could be even agencies, United Nations agencies, some governments, or small nonprofits that are trying to build tech tools to help service the social sector area that they're in, the community that they're in. So it could range from being able to have a national healthcare information registry or a map for drones to be able to understand where they should reseed in certain areas, or a wildlife conservation. Think about Earth Month earlier for this April, being able to track animals and creating ML models based on that. So a wide range of different projects. And today I want to chat a little bit more about building for social impact. I'm going to share my screen. Oh, thank you. There we go. And all right. So today, as I mentioned, just a very quick introduction on what it means, what social sector means, an overview of building tech in the social sector and challenges in open source specifically in the social sector, and then how you can get involved as well. So a little bit about the social sector. The social sector in what is defined as any non-governmental organization that works towards achieving sustainable development goals. So these are the UN Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, that are a number of goals that organizations, governments are, as well as private sector, public sector organizations are all trying to work towards for goals such as no poverty, better healthcare, gender equality, education, as well as life in water and life on land. You can take a look at, I can send a link later on some of these goals that a lot of other organizations, UN agencies are working towards. So the social sector comprises of these organizations who are trying to actively advance or positively contribute to any pressing societal issue. So that doesn't mean just nonprofits, it could be for profit organizations as well. So it's public sector, and they focus on anything from tech to training to something that is you can imagine on. So it's a very wide range. However, in building tech in the social sector, that's a little bit different. You all may have some experience in building tech in the private sector or for fun on the side. Some things that are different within the social sector is taking a look at the interoperability of the tools that you're building. So, in other words, what you're building for one solution, being able to make sure it can fit into all the other solutions that are happening, being able to make sure it could be reused multiple times in different scenarios without having to have a high cost to change it to fit into different scenarios. Next is having a monitoring evaluation incorporated in the tool that you built. So within the private sector, you may have something similar like KPIs or having certain goals that you want to meet for your specific product. That's something similar within the social sector. This study is called monitoring evaluation, and that brings in the entire impact on what you're building and how it impacts certain people that use that tool. Lastly, it's resource sustainability, making sure that what's being built can be reused and doesn't need a lot of support. Open source is great for this because it does focus on sustainability as well. So next, we want to talk a little bit more about the challenges in open source in the social sector. So we had a bit of background about what it means. So some of the challenges with building solutions is a lot of times you don't want to build fast and try to break things as much as possible because there's a real life impact at the end for individuals that are using these tools. Some of the elements we want to consider is on security. So being able to take a look at begin addressing really legitimate concerns underlying the need for encryption without undermining legitimate law enforcement objectives. So, in other words, where that tool is built and where it's being enabled, you need to consider those laws there, as well as human rights based laws and different approaches to really address harmful online content. A lot of OS tenants, open source tenants, supports guidance on ethical use and production technology. So definitely take a look at the licenses that you have. And also, a great part of security is that transparency. Having consistent, transparent documentation, talking about how that tool can be used is really great to be able to enable more organizations to use your open source tool. Next is on connectivity. A lot of times with bandwidth limitations in certain areas, it can be really tough and there's some challenges. For instance, being able to build a tool that doesn't need to depend on certain connectivities can mean that more people can use it for a longer period of time. Considering on slow or unreliable internet connections is something that you might need to consider when you're building your tool. A lot of times, if it requires a lot of bandwidth, then you might have a reduced number of people using that tool. Next, consider also on digital and technical literacy. So there's a lot of really great documentation open source. A lot of people have great readmes on how to use your tool, but also consider having those tutorials and documentations written in different languages or multiple languages to lessen the barriers for any non-English speakers, or making having different access in terms of you might have a video on YouTube. However, there's some regions that cannot access YouTube. So being able to make it a little bit easier for individuals to contribute wherever they are. Next is on resourcing. So resourcing is a big one because a lot of times there's volunteer burnout, there's funding restraints. So sustainability models with an open source is really key to make sure projects can continue and can live on, even way years after it has been introduced. So being able to develop sustainable business models for the project is very complex because a lot of projects may rely on grants or donations or alternative revenue streams that private sector organizations may not normally use. So being able to be creative on that, as well as being engaging with the community on events like these, like hackathons, to really share your project out and get the community working on a specific project. So it's a lot of information there on what social sector is, a lot of different challenges. I'm going to do a quick pause here to see if there's any questions. Great. All right, I'm glad there's no questions. Feel free to add your questions in the chat in the comments below, and I'll keep an eye on the comments as well. All right, so next is ways that you can get involved working on tech for social impact. So there's a lot of different organizations, a lot of different opportunities within your community, within where you work or where you study to be able to get involved. Some other ways, in addition to that, there are lists of open source projects that are certified as a public good by the United Nations called the Digital Public Goods Alliance. So this is an organization made up of a number of different governments, UN agencies to go through and verify and certify, is this open source project a digital good? So in other words, they have a specific license and they also contribute to any of the sustainable development goals. And I can also share the list here on a number of different projects I can then go and contribute to. So then you can go and find a project that you are interested in, contribute a little bit, and you can grow your portfolio as well. Other things that you can do, a lot of individuals may start their own project. However, I do want to consider those challenges originally that we first talked about, as well as the elements on creating tech for social impact that you want to make sure this tool can be interoperable, can stand on its own. So I recommend to really join an existing project at first, and then before really branching out and building your own, and always having the support for your community. Next is having resources, being able to support resources for nonprofits. So this is something that you can do in terms of working in tech for social impact is consider any training programs that are provided by organizations like N10 or other social enterprise development platforms. So being able to learn a little bit more before you go ahead and start your own project to consider how nonprofit organizations may use tech, what are the challenges that they have, and being able to hopefully be able to help support that gap. Some of the great tools on GitHub as well. There's sponsors, for instance, taking a look at what digital public goods are on sponsors is some way that you can also contribute, or finding their projects on GitHub to help work on them. And I think I have, yes. So one way that you can contribute to a for good first issue. So this is a site, I'm gonna add the link down there in the chat afterwards. All right, is a site called For Good First Issue, similar to many of the Good First Issue sites. However, what we've done is we've collected a number of digital public good and social impact projects on the site, and then you can then go through, find a project that you're interested in. If you need some ideas, there's some fascinating projects on there, such as being able to provide direct deposits to internally displaced individuals around the world, being able, as I mentioned, there's a mapping project on finding arid land and being able to reseed them. A wide range. There's a great one also on being able to help on anticipating natural disasters before it happens. So the World Food Program can then evacuate people ahead of time, make sure they have the right resources, and that has a really fascinating one on taking a look at mapping, understanding data modeling a little bit more as well. So definitely recommend you take a look at there. However, also if you have a project that you think could be a good fit to become a digital public good or should be on this list as well, you can go on there on the site and recommend a project, and then it can get added to this list, and hopefully we can bring more people and more developers to work on specific projects. All right, so a very quick one today because I wanted to leave some time for chatting with each other, some Q&A. Do you have any questions that I can help answer? And you can also reach out to me. My email is there. All right, I see a question. Could you share an example of a project or initiative you've been involved with that has successfully leveraged technology or innovation to create meaningful social impact? What are some key lessons learned from that experience? Yes. I have a number of different projects. I think most recently, there's one with the World Health Organization that was interested in really understanding the health of all of their open source projects. And they have a lot of them. So, the World Health Organization, as you may know, it's a UN agency that really tracks the public health of a number of different countries, the peoples. During COVID, you may have heard of them and interacted with some of their programs. And so they have a lot of different programs. It's a large agency, and a lot of open source tools are built from them. And so they just wanted a way to really have one snapshot, a dashboard to see how the health of each of the projects are doing. So we had a project to really take a look at what we can do, pulling in some of the data that they have. And we're also hoping to open source this dashboard for other UN agencies to use to monitor the health of their open source projects. And we leverage a lot from the Chaos Foundation as well, some of the metrics that they released as what are good metrics to really measure for the health of an open source project. Another project that comes to mind, working with the government of Brazil in the Inter-American Development Bank to be able to create a data model map to understand where they should build schools. So a lot of school children in the specific state of Pará in Brazil, take school bus boats to go to school, and they're painted yellow. And being able to find and map out where they should best build schools and provide those recommendations to the government, and they can then build schools there. That really grew out actually with an open source project from COVID, where they wanted to understand what's the best way to have vaccine clinics, and they need to reuse that model for schooling, and then down the line being able to also understand population growth, understand where's the best areas to build them based on traffic, roads. So that was a very interesting project. Some key lessons learned from these experiences was really being able to consider the very long-term goal. So, in other words, these projects, we have an immediate problem that you want to solve, but then also considering this project, this model that you're creating and the solution that you're creating will be used 10 years down the line, 5 years down the line. A lot of times technology will change right now. However, the core of how that problem is solved will stay the same. So, for example, on that mapping problem, on the data modeling problem, being able to make sure you can easily take in more data, new data that comes in, census data that will come in the next 10 years. And then considering, okay, maybe what if population decreases? What happens then? You don't want schools to close, but can these schools be reused for something else? Community centers, for instance. Um, Okay, so hopefully that answered your question, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions as well. Um, all right, take a look at any other questions I can help answer. I think. All right.
I did have a question here since
Yeah.
I'm back again. So I think my question is more with regards to the open source development. So
Mhm.
most of the times I face this problem that I build something and I just don't get enough people to, let's say, contribute its development or take it further. So have
Mhm.
you faced some challenges like this, and how would you suggest to overcome this?
This is a big challenge as well. I think I also should have called it out in addition, because I find that is a challenge for I think almost all of open source overall.
Hmm.
Somebody mentioned something to me called calling it open source, hoping that just because you open source it, you add a license, have a great README, doesn't mean people will come to your project and contribute or stay. So a lot of times that engagement piece is a much more difficult challenge to be able to tackle. And that's one thing where we have decided to also create a program to be able to train community managers. So telling social sector organizations, just because you open source a project, that's great. However, the community doesn't mean it's automatically going to come to your project. You need to have a community manager who is engaged in welcoming developers in, making it really easy for them to contribute. So in other words, they might contribute and their PR is just sitting there. So you need someone to really go through, answer questions on issues, making sure stale issues are taken off, and having really fresh information on your project. So in other words, you can see when someone last contributed, how recent it is. So making it attractive in that way, that there's a lot of activity on there, encourages developers to also contribute as well. So I think those are some of the things in terms of engagement, which really is could be someone's full time job to be able to do, and because it is a lot of work.
Hmm.
Open source, sometimes it's called, oh, it's free and open source. It is, but also for an organization that wants open source, you may need to dedicate a lot of resources to make sure the community is happy and there's engagement within all the developers. Which, for example, in hackathons, and acknowledging the contribution of all the people that work on the projects, whether that's through badges, being able to write recommendation letters outside of just GitHub. A lot of times, this is really helpful for someone starting in their career as well.
Hmm. Okay, yeah. So, okay, I need to remember that community managers are the way to go.
It is
Definitely.
definitely one way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, just to add on that, GitHub, we will be launching a digital public good community manager training program. So anybody interested in learning a little bit more about community management, we're going to release this next cohort in May. So you guys are getting the first preview of this. And we can send this through to all the All-in students that this new program starting. And at the end of it, you'll be matched directly with, for successful community managers, a digital public good, and work on a project, a capstone project that you can then add to your portfolio.
Ooh, nice. Woohoo. The first time we heard this. You heard this here. Yeah, we should keep that as a tagline. Okay, there is another question here, I think. So, yeah, I'll leave that to you.
Let's see. All right, so it says, as an African developer working on a social impact project, I'm keen to explore avenues for partnerships and funding to scale my initiative. What advice do you have for navigating the funding landscape and establishing partnerships with organizations or investors who share a commitment to social impact in Africa? This is a big one. Funding is really difficult. So I hear you on this a lot of times with nonprofits as well as open source organizations. Funding cycles don't stop. I would recommend taking a look at different grants that are outside just social impact. So in other words, there could be competitions that have a certain larger fee that can come if you win that competition for being able to solve social impact. So if you don't have an idea yet, or you do have an idea, you can submit your project for those grants, for those competitions, and then receive those grants. Grant writing, of course, is also another full-time job sometimes, because there's grant cycles that happen every year. So having all your information ready for your grant. In other words, grant writing will require knowing what your product does, what your program offers, all the costs of the program, all that support's needed, and then submitting for those grants. In addition to that, there's also different opportunities. A lot of nonprofits can submit their programs for events such as Google Summer of Code, and being able to have more resources and partnerships in that way. So consider your organization, your nonprofit, as any other for profit organization, and approach those fundings in that way. And then you can also have access to nonprofit organization funding as well, whether that's through government funding, through foundations, through grants, and other partnerships where you can share some costs. And the last thing I want to say, so GitHub is also looking at this funding challenge. We really do want to have something similar, a different product or package that we can then offer to nonprofits. Currently, we offer GitHub Teams for free for nonprofits, a nonprofit. So, in other words, if the government has a specific tax code or a specific designation for organizations that are nonprofits, then they would qualify for a free GitHub Teams. And we're looking at ways to have discounted products as well, in addition, such as GitHub Enterprise and other products that could be a good fit for organizations that work in social impact.
Okay, thank you so much. Uh, I think just to kind of add on to it, I think the GitHub sponsors was a really good initiative. Frankly, I remember like sponsor helping out a few projects that I kind of use daily. So yeah, that's something amazing, definitely. And I just had one more follow up question on the one that we answered right now, which is the
Yeah.
avenues for partnerships. So a lot of times I have seen again on the side of if I want to partner with an organization, uh, okay, I'm too concerned if my open source project will become kind of closed source if it becomes a part of some organization. I think that there's that scare of
Mm.
how do I build money out of it but keep it open source. Yeah, so I think, yeah, the question is more on the lines of how do I make money out of something or a project, something that I've open sourced, but also keep it open for everyone to use, make it easy to access. Can you share some insights on that?
Yeah, I definitely can. So that is something that certain organizations do have that fear, because you definitely need resources and
Mm,
funding for that. And one challenge, especially in the social sector, is a lot of times if, for instance, you're going for grants. However, the grant stipulates you must have ABC, or they're pushing direction in a certain way. And unfortunately, organizations sometimes you might hear you follow where the funding is, but that might not be where you want to work on. That is definitely a challenge overall. I would recommend within open source is really sticking with that license that you have and saying that this is license that we have. However, we could have a more, for instance, a separate repo
mm,
just for private type of development, and then one for open source as well. So that is one way where you can have essentially two different sectors. You still have your open source tool, you still have everything there, and then something private that's just for your solution with your partners. And maybe this means that it's different from what you're building. So you want to build maybe a separate repo and separate project just for this partnership. That is one way I've seen, but that's a great question, and also would love to hear from the audience if they have any thoughts on that question too, because I think that's a great question.
Yeah, actually, yes, I'll keep that open to everyone. And also, if there are any other questions that you want to keep coming, please do. I am so thankful to Cynthia for staying back and taking all the questions here. Like, so much good. Other than that, I think people are really enjoying the hackathon
Great.
and building for social good. Yeah, I think as a topic, it's been really nice to understand about what things GitHub is doing, and yeah, just understanding how we can all open source and at the same time, go for these new things that are coming up. I love the community program. I think something I would apply to.
Yeah, absolutely. So we will send out that Digital Public Good Community Manager program, a little bit more information about this. This is our second cohort, and we learned a lot from the All In program as well. It's a great program, and the trainings have been great for All In, and we want to be able to focus that to be able to encourage more open source developers to then work in the social sector to show that, hey, there is a great career within the social sector as well. It might be a little bit different from private sector. Some other things to consider for. So this program is going to be a free training, and it'll be completely virtual. The first cohort was focused on a very small group, and this time we're opening up to even more developers that are interested, including students as well as middle career or even experienced developers to contribute. And we'll have different workshops focusing on those things I mentioned and challenges in working in the social sector. And then afterwards, some guest speakers from our Digital Public Goods Alliance organizations to talk about how they built their tools as well. I see a question here. I'm posting a link to the training. Yes, we will launch that actually in May. So you're getting a first look at that. I can share the previous. So I can ask if the All In program can send that link once it's public, and then you can apply. And we're still working out the kinks on that program. So if you have any recommendations on topics that you're interested to learn about as well, feel free to email me, because we can then cater to what individuals are interested in learning to work in the social sector.
Okay, thank you so much. Also, talking about links, I remember you talking about the For Good first issue. So I
Yes,
actually went around and found that link. Hopefully, this
thank
is the
you.
correct one that
Yes,
I shared in the chat. Yeah.
that is correct.
Yes. I was looking at just some of the issues, and I love that this like sustainable development goal as a filter just makes it so easy because I am all for quality education. Kind of, I have a heart for that apart from other things, but that I think takes first priority for me in a way. So love that there's so many projects for it.
Yes, and we're also hopefully adding more. I
Yeah.
think you might find one that I saw was Moodle, is on maybe on there. I can't remember, but I think that's a great. They have an open source. Some part of their products open source. I think they're great for education as well. Just to put a recommendation.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, I will take a look at that. Okay, any other questions, anyone? Before uh, Cynthia goes away, anything from anyone?
Great. Well, the
Okay.
last thing I want to say is there is another hackathon in June with the UN agency. I'm trying to find it right now, and hopefully we can share that link too. If you're looking for more hackathons that's specific for good, it's called Reboot the Earth. They have some virtual ones, some in-person ones as well. I will try to put it in the chat if I can. Um, I can recommend that you can take a look. If Let me try and find this for everyone. If you're interested in hackathons, this is a fun one too, and it's working and winning teams. There is a prize as well. So UT, I put it in the private chat, but if you want to share that out with
Yeah, yeah,
everyone,
sure, sure will
I
do.
recommend. They will have in-person hackathons in New York, in India, Ethiopia, in Addis, in Rabat, Morocco, as well as a remote option too.
Oh, wow. Anything in the UK? Sorry, I missed that.
None in the UK, unfortunately. There is a remote option.
Okay, I'm going for the remote one then. That's me. Okay. Actually, I think that has been really helpful for everyone. Appreciate knowledge sharing, and on behalf of all the hackers, the all-in community, and on from behalf of MLH and myself included, I thank you so much for coming and sharing the knowledge with us. Okay, so
Thank
I
you.
don't think there are any questions, so I think we can take it away from here. Thank you so much once again. Okay,
Great.
with
Thank
this,
you.
I'll end the stream. Bye bye, everyone.